Picture this: Tokyo, late night. Neon lights bleeding into the rain-slick asphalt, the air thick with the smell of high-octane fuel and something else. Something primal. Because out of that electric haze, a roar would split the night, and then a monster would appear. Not the kind that stomps through skyscrapers, though it was certainly capable of flattening its competition. Tokyo, 1990. A roar splits the night, and a monster is born. Godzilla. Not the monster who stomps on skyscrapers. Although this beast ignited just as much fear in its enemies, I'm talking about the Nissan Skyline GTR. A car so legendary that it couldn't just be confined to the land of the rising sun. Oh no, it was out for global domination. It built a global cult following so passionate, so obsessed, that entire online communities were dedicated to its every modification. And then, as if it were a digital ghost, it vanished in 2021. Poof. Gone. Now, before you reach for your pitchforks, let's talk about why this car earned the name Godzilla. It wasn't just a cool nickname. It was a badge of honor, a declaration of dominance. Because from 1990 to 1993, in the All Japan Touring Car Championship, this thing went on a winning spree that reads like a cheat code: 29 consecutive victories. Yeah, you heard that right. Not 5, not 10, 29. As in, if this car was a person, it'd have a lifetime ban from every casino on earth for being too damn lucky or just too damn good. But its appetite for destruction wasn't limited to its home turf. This mechanical kaiju packed its bags and went international, snatching back-to-back victories at the legendary Spa, 24 hours in both 1990 and 1991. And then, just to prove it wasn't a fluke, it annihilated the competition at the brutal, soul-crushing Nürburgring 24 hours in 1990. We're talking about a car that was so unequivocally superior, so utterly, devastatingly effective, that it essentially became a pariah in some racing series. They didn't just change the rules to curb its dominance. They pretty much blew up the whole damn rulebook and started from scratch just to get this thing off the track. So, how did a car originally launch as a humble four-door sedan back in '69, a car that briefly disappeared faster than a free pizza at a car meet, and then reappeared 16 years later, morph into this undisputed champion? What secret sauce did Nissan pour into this legendary nameplate? And more importantly, why did such a celebrated, globally iconic machine, a car that spawned legions of fans and countless imitators, suddenly vanish from production just a few short years ago? Stay tuned, because the legend of Godzilla is far from over. Alright, so how do you create a monster like Godzilla? Well, like all good origin stories, you start small and with a surprising twist. See, when you think GTR, you probably picture a sleek, aggressive two-door coupe, right? Something built for speed, not for dropping the kids off at soccer practice. But here's the mind blower. Nissan's high-performance hero, the legendary Skyline GTR, actually started life as a four-door sedan. Yeah, a sedan. The kind you'd expect to see a grandpa driving, not terrorizing racetracks. This humble-looking four-door beast made its grand debut at the Tokyo Motor Show in 1968. And Nissan, being the clever bunch they are, didn't just plonk it on a stand. They showcased it right alongside their cutting-edge R380 race car. Why? To show off, of course. They wanted to scream, "Hey world, we're not just making sensible family cars. We're taking our race-winning tech and putting it right into your driveway." The first-gen Skyline GTR hitting the streets exclusively in Japan in February 1969 wasn't just a pretty face with extra doors. Under the hood was a derivative of the R380's 2.0-liter inline six-cylinder powerhouse, codename S20. And this engine, it was a big deal. It was the first mass-produced four-valve per cylinder, double overhead camshaft engine. Think of it as a tiny, highly sophisticated grenade, churning out a respectable 220 GP at 7,000 revolutions per minute and 177 Newton meters of torque at 5,600 revolutions per minute. But Nissan didn't just shove a spicy engine in there and call it a day. Oh no, they went full mad scientist on this thing. Flared wheel arches to tuck in some wider rubber variable ratio steering for sharper control, a McPherson front strut and semi-trailing arm rear suspension setup, and because they really meant business, a limited slip differential. This wasn't just a souped-up sedan, it was a bona fide factory race car you could buy. And boy, did it race! especially once a lighter two-door coupe model with a massive 100-liter fuel tank. Arrived in 1971. These early GTRs wasted no time carving out a reputation. We're talking 52 outright victories in Japanese touring car competitions within just 3 years, including an absolutely insane 49 consecutive wins. That's not just dominance, that's psychological warfare on the competition. Imagine showing up to a race, knowing you're probably just fighting for second place before the green flag even drops. Brutal. Now, every legend has its tragic chapter, and the GTRs came swiftly. The second generation Nissan Skyline GTR, codenamed KPGC110, made its public debut at the 1972 Tokyo Motor Show and went on sale in January 1973. This one was a two-door coupe from the get-go, based on the stylish C110 Skyline. It built on the original's foundations with some sweet upgrades, four-wheel disc brakes. Because stopping is sometimes as important as going fast, and aerodynamic body parts like a rear wing for that, all important high-speed stability. The 2.0-liter six-cylinder engine, while keeping the same power output, got some durability buffs like a full transistor ignition and a double roller type timing chain. Plus, it was the first to rock those iconic twin-round taillights that became a GTR signature. This second-gen GTR even got a cute nickname, the Kenmiri, after a super popular advertising campaign featuring a young couple, Ken and Mary, cruising through the Hokkaido countryside. Sounds idyllic, right? Almost like a fairy tale, except like many fairy tales, it had a dark twist. The Kenmiri launched directly into the teeth of the early 70s oil crisis. Suddenly, fuel wasn't just expensive, it was a national emergency. And with that came brutal, suffocating exhaust emission regulations in Japan. Nissan, with a heavy heart, pulled the plug on GTR production in April 1973, just 3 months after the first cars hit showrooms. 3 months. Can you imagine? As a result, less than 200 of these second-gen Kenmiri GTRs were ever produced. Today, if you can even find one, they're not just rare, they're considered holy grails for collectors. A sad, premature end for a car that had so much potential. And just like that, the GTR vanished. For 16 long years, the iconic nameplate lay dormant, a ghost in the machine. Car enthusiasts whispered its name, wondered if it would ever return. It felt like an eternity. But then, in 1989, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, or perhaps more accurately, like Godzilla emerging from the depths of the ocean, Nissan revived the GTR nameplate with the R32 Skyline. And this, my friends, is where things got really interesting. If the first-gen GTR was a promising young martial artist, the R32 was a full-blown, championship-winning ninja assassin, trained specifically for one purpose: to dominate Group A touring car regulations. This wasn't just a car, it was a technical tour de force, a statement of intent, designed from the ground up to shatter racing records across the globe. And, as we hinted earlier, it was so good, it eventually forced Australia's premier motorsport category to tear up its rulebook and start from scratch. Imagine being so overwhelmingly dominant that the people in charge literally have to invent new rules just to try and slow you down. That's R32 GTR levels of savage. Now, you might be thinking, what sorcery did Nissan weave into this thing? Well, remember the HR31 Skyline? The rear-wheel drive ancestor that was already a solid contender in the Australian Touring Car Championship? The R32 was its successor, but with a vengeance. Nissan wanted to take full, unholy advantage of the near-production car regulations. Initially, Nissan Motorsport in Japan had a cunning plan, a 2.4-liter twin-turbo six-cylinder. Why that size? Because it would slot the GTR into a lower weight category, giving it an advantage over its V8-powered rivals. But then, in a stroke of mad genius, or perhaps pure over-engineering, they decided, you know what? Let's add some more witchcraft. They developed an advanced four-wheel drive transmission and a four-wheel steering system. The idea? To counteract any potential power deficit and amplify its already impressive handling to something truly otherworldly. This wasn't just any all-wheel drive. It was dubbed ATESS. And let me tell you, this system bestowed the R32 Skyline GTR with phenomenal traction, especially in those dicey, slippery conditions and when rocketing out of slow-speed corners. It was like the car had Velcro for tires. But as often happens when you add more awesome, you add more weight. So those additional mechanical components pushed the R32 into the top class. Did Nissan bat an eye? Nope. They just shrugged and said, fine by us. That move allowed them to run wider, slick tires. And with that decision, they developed a larger capacity 2.6-liter motor that, in race trim, was capable of generating a staggering more than 450 kilowatts. That's over 600 horsepower back in the early 90s from a production car. And the results? Oh, the results were glorious. The Skyline GTR didn't just win, it annihilated its opposition. We're talking 29 consecutive victories in the All Japan Touring Car Championship between 1990 and 1993, a streak so legendary, it almost sounds made up. It then went on to score back-to-back wins at the Spa 24 Hours in 1990 and 1991 and clinched the top prize at the Nürburgring 24 Hours in 1990. It was literally collecting trophies like they were Pokemon. But the real drama unfolded in Australia. From the moment it hit the track in 1990 with drivers Jim Richards and Mark Skaife at the wheel, it utterly dominated the Australian Touring Car Championships. Richards snagged the 1990 and 1991 titles, and Skaife went on to win the first of his 5 crowns in 1992. Then came the iconic Bathurst 1000 endurance race, where this dynamic duo romped to victory in 1991 and 1992. The latter win, though, ended in true Australian fashion, controversy. Richards crashed in a torrential downpour. The race was stopped early, and he was booed on the winner's rostrum by a, shall we say, enthusiastic and hydrated crowd. His response, a legendary, profanity-laced rant that basically said, "You bunch of get over it." It was this runaway racing success, particularly its destructive force in Australia, that earned the GTR its now famous Godzilla nickname. The Australian media, perhaps feeling a bit like helpless citizens watching a giant monster stomp through their city, coined the term, a perfect nod to the fictional Japanese beast that laid waste to everything in its path. And it wasn't just a nickname, its dominance forced the Australian Touring Car Championship to ditch the global Group A regulations entirely. Think about that, one car, one nameplate, so good it broke an entire racing series. His motorsport modeling wasn't all bad though. It created an insatiable appetite for the GTR outside of Japan for the very first time. Nissan Australia, seeing the demand, imported a limited run of R32 Skyline GTRs to be sold locally. These production cars, with their legendary RB26DET 6-cylinder engine, put out a healthy 276 GP due to the gentleman's agreement among Japanese automakers. And they were fast, seriously fast. We're talking 0 to 100 kilometers per H in just 5.0 seconds. A time that would put many expensive, exotic European supercars of the era to shame. But how many of these road-going monsters actually made it to Australian shores? And what happened next for the GTR, now that it had conquered the world and earned its fearsome moniker? All right, you've heard the tales of the ancient beasts, the ones that laid the foundation for Godzilla's reign. You've seen how an oil crisis almost wiped out the bloodline, and how the R32 roared back, breaking rules and crushing spirits. You might even be thinking, that's it? That's the peak, right? How do you top a car that literally forces a racing series to surrender? Well, for a while, Nissan did. After a brief hiatus, the GTR nameplate once again went silent. But then something phenomenal happened. In 2007, the iconic GTR badge was revived, but this time it came back with a vengeance, and with a revolutionary twist. It was a standalone model. No longer a Skyline GTR, it was simply the Nissan GTR, the R35, and it cemented the nameplate not just as a performance car icon, but as a technological marvel that sent shockwaves through the entire automotive world. You see, the R35 wasn't just an evolution, it was a revolution. First teased as the GTR concept at the 2005 Tokyo Motor Show, and then making its glorious production debut at the same event 2 years later, this car was designed from the outset to be a supercar. Not just a fast car, but a bona fide supercar killer built to punch way above its weight class, while it kept the familiar two-door coupe silhouette, all-wheel drive, and twin-turbo 6-cylinder power plant that defined its predecessors. The R35 was entirely, utterly new. The body was uniquely styled, shedding any lingering ties to the pedestrian skyline. Every curve, every vent, every angle was meticulously sculpted to produce downforce for high-speed stability while maintaining an astonishingly low drag coefficient. Think about that for a second. A car with this much grip, this much raw power, was also one of the most aerodynamically efficient sports cars on the planet at the time. It was like a brick had somehow learned to fly very, very fast. And what about the heart of this new beast? Underneath that sleek, almost intimidating bodywork, the R35 housed an entirely new engine, a 3.8-liter twin-turbo V6, codenamed VR3, 8DET. This wasn't some old-school brute. It was a precision instrument. This V6 drove a complex all-wheel drive transmission via a 6-speed dual-clutch transaxle mounted in the rear axle. Why in the rear? For improved weight distribution, of course, because every ounce matters when you're defying physics. Bodywork. The R35 housed an entirely new engine, a 3.8-liter twin-turbo V6, codenamed VR3, 8DET. When it first launched, this new Godzilla was already a force to be reckoned with. The VR3 8DET 6 churned out 485 HP at 6,400 revolutions per minute, and 4 lbfs at 3,200 to 5,200 revolutions per minute. Numbers are cool, but what did that mean in the real world? It meant the R35 GTR was capable of rocketing from 0 to 60 in a mind-bending 3.6 seconds. To put that in perspective, in 2007, that kind of acceleration was reserved for cars with price tags that looked like phone numbers, and often they still couldn't keep up. But Nissan didn't stop there. Over the years, through a series of relentless model upgrades, they continued to refine, to tweak, to push the boundaries of what this car was capable of. That same engine, the VR3 8DET, in its highest grade, track-inspired GTR Nismo form, now produces a staggering 600 horsepower at 6,800 revolutions per minute, and 481 lbtf, a 3,600 to 5,800 revolutions per minute. We're talking 600 horsepower from a V6. This isn't just fast anymore. This is among the fastest accelerating cars on the entire planet, capable of sprinting to triple figures in under 3 seconds. Yeah, you heard that right. 3 seconds. It's the kind of acceleration that rearranges your internal organs. And because a Godzilla needs to prove its might, the R35 remains among the quickest production cars to lap the infamous Nürburgring. The GTR Nismo clocked a blistering 7 minutes and 8.679 seconds around the green hell, a time that puts it squarely in the territory of hypercars. Just like its predecessors, the R35 didn't shy away from motorsport. It continued the GTR legacy on racetracks around the world, securing 3 championship victories in the Japanese Super GT series in 2011, 2012, and 2015, taking an overall title win in the 2015 Blank Paint Endurance Series for GT3 machines, and even an outright victory in the brutal Bathurst 12-hour race in 2015. The R35 GTR was, for nearly 2 decades, Nissan's statement to the world that raw, unadulterated performance, combined with cutting-edge technology, could come from anywhere. It was a giant slayer, a testament to engineering brilliance, and a car that inspired a generation of enthusiasts. But, as you know, even legends have an end. So, what finally brought Godzilla's reign to a close in 2021, or did it? And what does the future hold for a nameplate synonymous with unstoppable speed? All right, you've heard the tales of the ancient beasts, the ones that laid the foundation for Godzilla's reign. You've seen how an oil crisis almost wiped out the bloodline, and how the R32 roared back, breaking rules and crushing spirits. But as the 2010s drew to a close, a new question emerged. What happens when 2 automotive giants, celebrating half a century of their respective crafts, decide to throw a party? In 2018, to mark the 50th anniversaries of both the GTR and the legendary Italian-designed Hausertal design, Nissan did something unprecedented. Hey, teamed up for a hyper-exclusive, utterly insane collaboration known as the GTR 50 by Edo Design. This wasn't just a limited edition trim. This was the R35 taken to its most extreme, artistic, and frankly, ridiculous conclusion. Think of it like this: Nissan provided the already potent 2018 GTR-N ISM-O as the canvas, and then handed the brushes, the chisels, and probably a few rocket launchers over to Ital Design for the engineering and construction. The result? A 720 horsepower, twin-turbo V6 monster capable of hitting 60 miles per hour in a mind-bending 2.6 seconds. And topping out at 330 kilometers per H, GT3 spec turbos, heavy-duty internals, a reinforced drivetrain. This thing was a symphony of overkill. But what truly sets the GTR50 apart is its utterly unique design. It's like a concept car that escaped from a fever dream. A prominent golden inner element, a power bulge hood, razor-thin LED headlights, and a roofline slammed by 54 mm. Around the back, those iconic twin-round taillights were reimagined into floating rings, complemented by a massive, adjustable rear wing. Inside, it's a bespoke masterpiece of carbon fiber, Alcantara, and fine Italian leather, all accented with subtle gold touches. Now, this level of exclusivity and performance doesn't come cheap. The original plan was to build just 50 units. However, due to, let's just say, market conditions, and a cool $1.1 million price tag appears that only 18 models were actually produced. That's fewer than 24 of these bespoke, hyper-performance machines existing in the wild. This makes the GTR50 an immediate, undeniable collector's item. But what does it mean for the GTR nameplate itself? Is this the ultimate celebratory swan song for Godzilla, the grand finale before the beast finally goes dormant? Or is it a glimpse into a potential, even more radical future for the GTR, a hint of what Nissan might unleash next? The vanishing act of 2021 looms large, leaving us to wonder, did Godzilla truly disappear? Or is it merely preparing for its next, most explosive evolution?